Stick to checking server cables, Warren, and go make sure the investors' coffee cups stay full. Those were the exact words spoken by Logan Pierce, a 32-year-old vice president of product with a Harvard MBA, a $3,000 suit, and zero coding ability. He said it inside the main glass conference room on the 42nd floor of Strata Analytics. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, you could see the entire Manhattan skyline glowing under the afternoon sun. Sitting around the mahogany table were 8 high-profile venture capital investors holding notebooks and tablet screens. They were preparing to back the biggest financial technology IPO of the year. On the wall behind Logan was a massive digital presentation slide. It displayed the master technical architecture of Aegis Core, a real-time financial processing engine capable of routing billions of dollars in daily transactions without losing a single microsecond of tracking. And Logan was lying to every single person in that room. "I personally designed and built this underlying ledger," Logan said, leaning against the table with a practiced, charming smile. "It took months of late-night weekend coding sprints in my home office. I wanted to ensure that Aegis Core had zero latency while keeping the encryption layers totally impenetrable. I sat near the back of the room, wearing a plain gray collared shirt and holding a worn leather notepad. My name is Warren Hayes. I am 48 years old, and my official title at Strata Analytics was Principal Systems Architect. Logan did not build Aegis Core. He did not write a single line of its code. He didn't even understand the basic logic behind its database tables. I spent 6 brutal years building Aegis Core from scratch. I gave up my health, my weekends, my sleep, and time with my family to engineer every single line, every algorithm, and every fail-safe in that engine. When one of the lead investors raised a hand and asked a sharp question about how the system protected live transaction data from cloud-based decryption attacks, Logan froze for a fraction of a second. Then, he began spewing complete nonsense about automated cloud keychains, an answer so technically flawed that it would expose millions of dollars to instant theft. I couldn't let him sell a lie that destroyed the system's integrity. "Actually, Logan," I said quietly, speaking up from the end of the table. My voice was calm, steady, and clear. "Aegis Core does not use cloud keychains. If you route transactions that way, you break the zero-trust architecture. The engine relies on a localized, hardware-gated vault structure. That is the only reason our latency stays under 3 milliseconds." The room went dead silent. The investors shifted in their leather chairs, turning to look at me. Logan's face flushed bright red. His jaw tightened, and the polite smile on his face turned into a cold, venomous glare. He took a slow breath, straightened his tie, and let out a short, patronizing laugh. "Thank you, Warren," Logan said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Everyone, this is Warren. He's our senior maintenance technician. He makes sure our physical server racks don't overheat and that our cables stay neatly organized. Warren gets a little confused when we discuss high-level strategic software architecture. Warren, why don't you step outside, check on the server cables, and make sure the investors have fresh coffee?" A couple of the younger venture capitalists let out an awkward, uncomfortable chuckle. Logan immediately turned his back to me and continued his polished pitch, talking about the upcoming $1.2 billion valuation on NASDAQ. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I sat back in my chair, feeling the bitter, icy sting of public humiliation wash over me. 6 years of my life, my brilliance, and my sweat had been reduced to an errand boy making coffee. I looked at Logan's confident, smug posture as he took full credit for my masterpiece. And in that quiet moment of disrespect, a cold realization settled deep in my chest. Logan was so blinded by his own arrogance that he had no idea how Aegis Core actually ran. And more importantly, he had no idea what was missing. To understand how I ended up in that glass conference room, you have to go back 6 years. When CEO Raymond Cross first brought me into Strata Analytics, the company wasn't a sleek tech giant valued at over $1 billion. It was a failing 3-room startup in a rundown building, running out of cash, and weeks away from complete bankruptcy. Their original software was slow, unstable, and constantly crashing under heavy load. Raymond was desperate. He sat me down in a cramped kitchen, pushed a cold cup of diner coffee toward me, and made a promise. He told me that if I built a real-time financial processing platform that could handle institutional trade volume, he would take care of me forever. Because the startup had almost no funding, I agreed to take a base salary that was 40% below market rate. In return, Raymond signed an early agreement and gave me a firm verbal promise. Upon any successful exit or public stock offering, I would receive a 3% founder equity stake. For a guy like me, that 3% wasn't about buying sports cars or fancy mansions. It was about security. It meant paying off the remaining mortgage on my modest home. It meant putting my 17-year-old daughter, Maya, through a good college without her taking on a single dollar of student debt. So I went to work. For 6 long years, I lived in front of my monitors. I designed the proprietary ledger from scratch. I wrote the mathematical algorithms that encrypted transaction data in real time. I built a system so stable that it processed tens of millions of records without a single crash. I saved Strata Analytics. Then, 2 years ago, the company started growing rapidly, and Raymond decided it was time to prepare for Wall Street. He hired Logan Pierce to professionalize our executive operations. Logan didn't see me as the brilliant architect who built the foundation. He saw me as a relic from the early days, an aging engineer who didn't fit the shiny, modern image he wanted to project to wealthy investors. Slowly and calculatedly, Logan began taking my authority apart. First, he reassigned my team of junior developers, sending them to flashy front-end projects, while leaving me alone to maintain the complex back-end system. Next, he moved my workspace from the main engineering floor down to a small, windowless basement office next to the server cooling pumps. Then came the quiet erasure. Logan took my technical white papers and patents, documents I had spent months writing, and stripped my name off the cover pages. He replaced my signature with his own and presented them to the board of directors as his personal inventions. Whenever I brought up technical concerns to Raymond, the CEO would simply pat my shoulder and tell me to focus on the code, assuring me that my equity was safe. The final blow came 3 weeks before the IPO. As principal systems architect, I was sent a confidential draft copy of the S-1 prospectus, the official filing document required by the Securities and Exchange Commission before going public. I sat at my desk in the quiet basement office, scrolling down to the executive breakdown and founder equity distribution tables. My breath hitched in my throat. My name was completely gone. There was no 3% founder equity for Warren Hayes. There was no mention of my name anywhere in the patent listings or history of the company. My entire 3% stake, worth over $35 million at the projected IPO price, had been absorbed and divided between Raymond Cross and Logan Pierce. 6 years of my life had been quietly stolen. I stared at the glowing monitor in the dim room, feeling a heavy, dark weight settle in my stomach. The betrayal was complete. The next morning, I walked straight into the executive suite on the top floor and demanded a private meeting with CEO Raymond Cross and Logan Pierce. I held a printed copy of the S-1 filing in my hand, my heart pounding against my ribs with heavy, quiet anger. When I walked into the corner office, there was no warm greeting. Raymond was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring down at the city streets below. He refused to look me in the eye. Logan was sitting behind a massive marble desk, wearing a tailor-made suit with a subtle, mocking smirk on his face. I placed the document on the desk between us and pointed directly at the equity tables. "My name is missing, Raymond," I said, keeping my voice low and steady. "Where is the 3% founder equity we agreed on 6 years ago? And why was my name removed from the Aegis Core patents?" Raymond let out a tired sigh and turned slightly, but still wouldn't make direct eye contact. Logan leaned back in his leather chair, crossing his arms over his chest. "Warren, let's be realistic here," Logan said smoothly. 3% of a $1 billion public valuation is $35 million. That kind of equity is reserved for executive leadership that drives market growth. You're a back-end engineer. You write lines of code in a basement. You don't build investor relationships or scale a corporate vision. "I built the entire engine," I said, staring straight into Logan's eyes. "Without my code, there is no company, there is no product, there is no IPO." Logan reached into a drawer and slid a thick manila folder across the polished marble top. Inside was a termination agreement and a severance offer. "We're streamlining our engineering department," Logan said, his tone turning cold and businesslike. "This package gives you 2 months of base salary. In exchange, you sign a complete non-compete, a full non-disclosure agreement, and surrender any potential legal claims against Strata Analytics' intellectual property." I looked down at the paper. 2 months of salary in exchange for 6 years of my life and $35 million of stolen equity. "And if I refuse to sign?" I asked. Logan chuckled softly, leaning forward. "Then you leave today with nothing, Warren. Wall Street doesn't care about gray hair or guys who sit behind dark monitors in basement offices. Wall Street buys young, dynamic executive leadership. Old-school coders like you are a dime a dozen. The codebase is fully migrated, stabilized, and completely owned by Strata Analytics. We don't need you anymore." I turned to Raymond, waiting for the man I had saved from bankruptcy 6 years ago to say something. Raymond just cleared his throat, picked up a pen, and looked down at his desk. "It's just business, Warren," Raymond muttered quietly. "Sign the paper and take the money." In that exact second, every trace of hurt and shock vanished from my mind. In its place came a deep, absolute, icy clarity. I realized that my years of quiet loyalty, my patience, and my hard work had been viewed as nothing more than weakness. I closed the folder and pushed it back across the desk. I didn't sign it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten them, and I didn't make a scene. "I'm done," I said calmly. I walked back down to my basement office, gathered my personal belongings, a family photograph of my daughter, an old coffee mug, and a leather notebook, and placed them inside a single brown cardboard box. 15 minutes later, I walked through the glass lobby doors into the crisp autumn air, officially unemployed at 48 years old. As I stood on the sidewalk watching the city traffic, I took a deep breath. Logan thought he had completely won, but he was about to learn a very expensive lesson about the code he claimed to own. What Logan Pierce didn't understand, and what his corporate arrogance prevented him from ever learning, was how Aegis Core was actually built. 6 months before I was fired, external cybersecurity auditors were hired to inspect Strata Analytics' entire platform before the company could apply for an IPO. Logan came running down to my basement office in a total panic, He ordered me to lock down all root server security immediately. He wanted to make sure that no rival tech firm, former employee, or foreign hacker could ever copy, clone, or steal the core architecture before the public stock launch. "Make it ironclad, Warren," Logan had demanded, leaning over my shoulder without looking at the monitor. "I want root-level security that cannot be bypassed by anyone under any circumstances." So I did exactly what he asked. I built an immutable zero-trust security vault directly into the bedrock of Aegis Core. Because Aegis Core processed billions of dollars in live financial transactions every day, the system needed a way to verify that its central encryption algorithms had not been tampered with or corrupted. To solve this, I designed a monthly cryptographic pulse system. Every 30 days, the core database engine executes an automated internal security audit. To remain online and active, the system requires a root-level cryptographic token exchange, a digital handshake that verifies system ownership and re-authenticates the master root encryption key. Without that monthly handshake, the vault automatically closes. And here was the critical detail that Logan never bothered to discover. The master root encryption key was not stored on Strata Analytics cloud servers. It was not saved on an internal company hard drive, and it was not accessible through any corporate network or remote admin portal. The key existed inside a physical, air-gapped hardware security token, a heavy metallic USB key that hung quietly on my personal keyring, right next to my house keys. Because Logan rushed me out of the building in a desperate hurry, he never conducted an engineering exit interview. He never requested a technical audit of system dependencies, and he never asked for a handoff of root-level security protocols. In his mind, I was just an overpaid technician who checked server cables. He assumed that once I walked out the door, the software would keep running on autopilot forever. Nobody else at Strata Analytics knew the hardware token existed. None of the junior developers knew about the monthly handshake protocol. It was embedded so deep within the low-level kernel code that it didn't even show up on standard administrative dashboards. When the 30-day authentication cycle expired, Aegis Core would not crash randomly. It wouldn't throw minor error codes or show system bugs. Instead, the zero-trust architecture would trigger an automated, high-level vault lockdown. The moment that happened, every database table, transaction log, and encryption pipeline would freeze instantly. The entire platform would become an unreadable, impenetrable vault of scrambled data. No engineer on Earth could force it open without the physical hardware key hanging on my keyring. Sitting at my wooden kitchen table at home, sipping hot black coffee, I pulled out my keyring and placed the metallic hardware token next to my laptop. I opened my personal terminal and checked the system's internal timer. The exact timestamp for required re-authentication was set for 9:35 a.m. on the morning of Strata Analytics' NASDAQ public launch, exactly 5 minutes after the opening bell was scheduled to ring in Times Square. I didn't sabotage the code. I didn't write a virus, plant a backdoor, or breach a single cyber law. I had simply built the exact high-security vault system that Logan Pierce had ordered me to build. I was no longer an employee of Strata Analytics. I was under no legal or professional contract to perform manual maintenance or provide free cryptographic keys to a company that had stolen my life's work and thrown me into the street. All I had to do was sit back, stay silent, and let my code do exactly what it was designed to do. The clock was ticking, and Logan Pierce was walking straight into a trap of his own making. Over the next 3 weeks, the financial news was completely dominated by Strata Analytics. Every time I turned on the television in my living room, there was Logan Pierce. He was dressed in tailored dark suits, sitting on morning market shows on CNBC and Bloomberg, smiling broadly under the bright studio lights. The network anchors called him a Silicon Valley prodigy, a visionary leader, and the genius who was about to revolutionize Wall Street with Aegis Core. The media hype reached a fever pitch. Investors rushed to get in on the upcoming public offering. Analysts projected the company's valuation at a staggering $1.2 billion. On paper, Logan was about to become a very wealthy man, lauded as an enterprise tech icon. Meanwhile, deep inside the server rooms at Strata Analytics, the technical reality was quietly unraveling. 10 days before the IPO, the automated maintenance system triggered its first background alert. A yellow warning flag appeared on the internal monitoring console, notifying the system administrators that the root security license was approaching its mandatory 30-day re-authentication window. The junior IT staff, whom Logan had appointed after pushing me out, had no idea what the warning meant. They took the screenshot straight to Logan's executive office. Instead of calling an architectural review or reaching out to the man who built the infrastructure, Logan waved them off in disgust. In his mind, anything that threatened to slow down his multi-million-dollar marketing campaign was just a nuisance. He called it a minor software glitch, an old, useless notification left behind by outdated code. Override it, Logan ordered the young technicians. Force the system past the warning flag. Nothing delays this IPO. The junior staff did what they were told. They wrote a temporary script to hide the visual alerts from the main dashboard, forcing the server logs to clear. They thought they had fixed the problem. In reality, all they did was silence the alarm on a ticking time bomb. They didn't resolve the underlying security requirement. They just turned off the warning light. 2 days before the IPO, Logan decided to rub salt in my wounds. I was sitting at my wooden kitchen table, drinking a cup of coffee, when my phone chimed with a new email notification. I opened it up. It was sent directly from Logan's personal corporate address. There was no text in the body of the email, just a link to a high-profile video interview on CNBC featuring Logan, titled, "The Visionary Behind the $1 Billion Financial Engine." Underneath the link, Logan had added a single, arrogant sentence. "Thought you'd like to see what real success looks like from the outside, Warren." I sat in the quiet room for a long moment, staring at his words on the glowing screen. I didn't get angry. I didn't feel the urge to type back a furious reply or defend myself. I simply clicked the delete button, cleared the email from my trash folder, and put my phone face down on the table. The night before the IPO, a heavy silence settled over my house. Outside, a soft rain tapped against the window panes of my small home office. I sat at my desk with my personal terminal open. On the screen was a simple digital countdown timer linked directly to the Zero Trust System protocol inside Aegis Core. On the desk beside my keyboard lay the physical, air-gapped hardware token, its polished metallic casing reflecting the dim lamplight. The countdown timer read, 12 hours, 00 minutes, 00 seconds. Strata Analytics was marching toward Wall Street at full speed, utterly convinced they were about to conquer the world. They had the money, the headlines, and the expensive suits, but I held the key. On the morning of the IPO, Times Square was electric. Inside the NASDAQ market site building, the atmosphere was loud and celebratory. Champagne glasses clinked, news cameras flashed, and dozens of Strata Analytics executives, dressed in custom-tailored suits, laughed and took pictures together. Standing front and center on the main stage were CEO Raymond Cross and Vice President Logan Pierce. Logan was wearing a $5,000 tuxedo, beaming with pride, waving at the crowd of reporters and high-net-worth investors. He held the ceremonial wooden hammer in his right hand, ready to ring the opening bell. Back in my quiet kitchen, 60 miles away from the chaos of New York City, I poured myself a fresh mug of black coffee. I sat down at my table, turned on the live financial news feed, and picked up the physical hardware security token from my desk. At exactly 9:30 a.m., the official countdown hit 0. Logan and Raymond slammed the hammer down on the ceremonial bell. The crowd cheered. Confetti rained down from the ceiling, and the massive electronic screens surrounding Times Square lit up with the new ticker symbol. Within 90 seconds of trading, dollars stored in dollars exploded upward by 18%. The financial anchors on television were practically breathy with excitement, raving about Strata Analytics' incredible momentum and calling Aegis Core the most impressive financial architecture of the decade. I took a slow sip of coffee and glanced down at the digital clock on my terminal screen. 9:34 a.m. 30 seconds remaining until the 30-day Zero Trust Vault window expired. Across the nation, thousands of enterprise banking clients, trading firms, and hedge funds were actively routing hundreds of millions of dollars through Aegis Core. The data stream was running at peak capacity. At exactly 9:35 a.m., the internal clock hit 0. My secure terminal screen flashed twice and displayed a single high-level administrative prompt in crisp white text: Automated Root Audit Complete. RE Authenticate Master Root Key. Y9N. I picked up the physical metallic token on my keyring. I held it in my palm for a second, feeling its weight. If I plugged it into my computer and selected Y, the vault would validate, the license would refresh for another month, and Strata Analytics would ride off into the sunset with my life's work. I rested my finger on the keyboard and calmly pressed N. Then I hit Enter. The terminal screen instantly updated. Master root key revoked, initiating Zero Trust Vault lockdown. In that exact millisecond, Aegis Core executed its built-in security protocol. The entire transaction engine came to a dead, sudden halt. Every database table was instantly encrypted with multi-layered quantum algorithms. All active data pipelines were severed. Across the country, on thousands of banking dashboards and institutional trading desks, screens went pitch black before throwing up an unyielding error code. Billions of dollars in live transactions froze instantly in midair. Money stopped moving. Trades ceased processing. On the live broadcast from the NASDAQ floor, the mood shifted in a heartbeat. The loud cheers died down. The camera caught Logan Pierce mid-laugh, but his expression instantly froze. The glowing green stock ticker screens behind him suddenly turned bright, glaring crimson red. A massive, bold system failure notification flashed across every monitor on the trading floor. Critical secure vault lockdown. Master key missing. In the TV studio, the anchors stopped talking about record profits. Their voices turned tense and frantic as news broke that Strata Analytics' flagship platform had completely collapsed nationwide. Within 3 minutes, trading desks began dumping millions of shares in sheer panic. The stock didn't just dip, it plunged like a stone off a cliff. On screen, I watched Logan Pierce scramble toward a laptop at the podium, his face drained of all color, his hands shaking violently as he hit random keys trying to figure out what was happening. Beside him, Raymond Cross looked like he was going to throw up on his expensive leather shoes. I sat back in my kitchen chair, took another quiet sip of hot black coffee, and watched the corporate machine collapse under the weight of its own arrogance. The master key was sitting right in front of me, and the world was about to find out who really built the foundation. Within 15 minutes of the market opening, Strata stock dropped by 65%. NASDAQ officials immediately stepped in and executed an emergency trading halt to prevent total market contagion. Across Wall Street, The reaction was pure fury. Major investment banks, global hedge funds, and enterprise clients were locked out of their financial pipelines. Phone lines at Strata Analytics were jammed with hundreds of corporate attorneys issuing emergency breach of contract notices and threatening multi-billion-dollar lawsuits. Inside the glass executive tower in Manhattan, the celebration had turned into an absolute nightmare. Down in the main server room, Logan Pierce was sweating profusely through his tuxedo. He stood over the lead IT engineers, screaming at them to force a hard reboot of the entire infrastructure. "Just bypass the lockdown," Logan yelled, his voice cracking with panic. "Break the encryption. Wipe the security logs if you have to. Just get the system back online before the press conference." The young engineers frantically typed override commands into their terminals. But they didn't understand how zero-trust architecture works. When the system detected unauthorized, brute-force administrative logins attempting to bypass the missing root key, Aegis Core interpreted the action as a massive hostile cyber attack. Automatically, the security vault triggered its secondary defense protocol. It instantly wiped all active RAM caches and permanently locked down every database connection across the entire server network. The lead engineer turned white as a sheet, took his hands off the keyboard, and looked up at Logan. "It's over," the engineer whispered, his voice shaking. "The system just hard-locked. Nothing is running, and nothing can be overridden. There is no cloud bypass." CEO Raymond Cross, who had just rushed into the server room, grabbed the engineer by his collar. "What do you mean it's over? We built this platform. Who has the master security key?" The engineer swallowed hard, looking terrified. "Logan didn't build this platform, Raymond. Warren Hayes built it. The entire core architecture relies on an air-gapped cryptographic hardware token that Warren holds on his personal keyring. Logan never did a handoff. Nobody in this building has the root key except Warren." Raymond turned slowly to look at Logan, his eyes wide with absolute disbelief and rage. Logan's face was completely drained of color. He pulled out his phone with trembling hands and dialed my number. 60 miles away, sitting at my kitchen table in the quiet morning light, my phone began to ring. The screen showed Logan Pierce's caller ID. I didn't answer. I let it ring until it went straight to voicemail. 10 seconds later, Logan called again. I flipped the phone face down on the table and casually finished my cup of coffee. 2 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time, it was CEO Raymond Cross. I let it ring 4 times before answering, keeping my voice cold, flat, and completely calm. "Hello, Raymond," I said. "Warren, thank God you picked up," Raymond gasped, his voice trembling so hard he could barely breathe. "Warren, listen to me. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. The entire platform is down. Wall Street is halting our stock, and clients are threatening to destroy us. Please, Warren, we need you to come back right now. I'll double your old salary. I'll give you whatever title you want." "My salary isn't the issue, Raymond," I said softly. "You let Logan erase my name, steal my life's work, and throw me out like trash. I was wrong, Warren. I was completely wrong," Raymond begged, weeping openly into the phone. "Please, just give us the security key. Tell us how to unlock the vault." "I don't negotiate over the phone, Raymond," I said calmly. "If you want to talk to me, you know where I live." I hung up the phone. 45 minutes later, a speeding black luxury sedan pulled up onto the quiet curb outside my suburban home. The door flew open, and Raymond Cross stumbled out, sweating straight through his expensive suit, his hair completely disheveled. I was sitting comfortably in a wooden chair on my front porch, wearing a simple flannel shirt, holding a warm cup of tea. Raymond ran up the porch steps, pulling a leather checkbook out of his jacket pocket. "Name your price, Warren," Raymond cried, his voice breaking as he held a pen over the blank paper. "Write down any number you want. 50 million, 100 million. Just sign into the server and give us the key before the board liquidates the company." I looked at Raymond, feeling no anger, no hatred, and no rush. "Put the checkbook away, Raymond," I said quietly. "Here are my non-negotiable terms." I leaned forward on the front porch and laid out my conditions clearly and slowly. "First," I said, holding up one finger, "Logan Pierce will be publicly terminated by the board of directors today for gross misrepresentation and corporate fraud. His firing will be broadcast live to the financial press." Raymond nodded frantically, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Consider it done. He's finished." "Second," I continued, "Strata Analytics will issue an official SEC disclosure amendment restoring my name as the sole principal systems architect and original inventor of Aegis Core, along with full co-founder recognition." "Yes, done. Anything else?" Raymond pleaded. "Third," I said, looking him dead in the eye, "you will issue a direct 10% equity settlement, wired immediately into my personal bank account in cleared cash. Not unvested stock options, not promises, cash." Faced with total financial annihilation, criminal regulatory investigations from the SEC, and the complete destruction of his life's work, Raymond had no choice. He pulled out his phone, called the board of directors on speakerphone, and laid out my terms. The emergency board meeting took less than 5 minutes. They accepted every single condition unconditionally. An hour later, the official wire transfer hit my bank account. $37.5 million, fully cleared and confirmed. Shortly after, I turned on the television in my living room. A live breaking news press conference appeared on screen. The chairman of the board stood before a crowd of shouting reporters in Times Square and announced the immediate firing of Logan Pierce for severe corporate misconduct and fraudulent claims regarding technical authorship. The camera caught Logan being quietly escorted out the side exit of the headquarters building by 2 armed security officers, stripped of all his unvested shares, his corporate career burnt to ashes. Sitting on my front porch with my laptop open, I plugged the metallic hardware token into my USB port. I entered my secure administrative password and transmitted the master cryptographic pulse back to the Strata Analytics server array. Within seconds, Aegis Core unlocked. The transaction pipelines cleared, data resumed flowing seamlessly across enterprise banking networks, and the system stabilized completely. I provided just enough system access for the engineering team to keep the infrastructure running safely under new leadership. Then, I opened a blank document, typed out my formal letter of immediate resignation, and sent it directly to the board of directors. I was officially a free man. In the months that followed, Strata Analytics managed to survive under restructuring, but Logan Pierce was utterly ruined. He faced a barrage of civil shareholder lawsuits and criminal fraud investigations that ensured he would never work in technology or finance again. As for me, I paid off my mortgage that afternoon. I established a fully funded trust fund that guarantees my daughter Maya will never have to worry about college tuition or financial security for the rest of her life. Today, I run my own independent systems engineering firm out of a quiet, sunlit office near my home. I choose my own clients, set my own hours, and work with honest engineers who respect the craftsmanship behind the code. Looking back on everything that happened, I realized a fundamental truth about the corporate world. Slick presentations, polished promises, and $5,000 suits can rent power for a little while. But when the dust settles and the noise fades away, True authority will always belong to the people who build and understand the foundation.